Welcome to Sleeping with Sarah. I'm Sarah Albritton, a narcoleptic comedian, and this is a podcast where I interview people in my bed and we talk about sleep, comedy, and relationships. I'm happy to be part of the Laugh Factory podcast network. I am recording this in Fulton, Tennessee, in the middle of nowhere, so I apologize if the sound quality is a little bit off. Happy holidays, everybody. Happy belated Christmas, happy New Year's, happy Hanukkah, happy Kwanzaa, everything else happy. Happy to be saying goodbye to 2016. Am I right? For my 42nd episode, I interviewed New York comedian Matt Ruby. Matt has an album coming out in March called Hot Flashes. You can also follow Matt on Twitter and Instagram at Matt Ruby or go to mattrubycomedy.com for upcoming dates. Big shout out to Curtis and the Laugh Factory Chicago for letting me record this podcast in his bed. You can also catch me on January 3rd at Secrets, Lies, and Alibis in Chicago at the Elbow Room. Sleeping with Sarah is brought to you by Audible.com. Go to audibletrial.com/sleepingwithsarah to get a free audiobook of your choice. This week, I'd like to recommend The Princess Diarist by Carrie Fisher. She will be missed. May the force be with her, always. Please remember, if you do like this podcast, to review and like it on iTunes and iHeartRadio, and find out more on the website, sleepingwithsarah.com. Follow me on Twitter at Sarah Albritton. Well, Matt and I got into a really awesome, deeper conversation I can't wait to share with you, so let's get started with the show.
Sleeping with Sarah.
Welcome to Sleeping with Sarah. I'm Sarah Albritton, and I'm here with my guest, Matt Ruby.
Hey everyone, how are you?
How'd you sleep last night, Matt?
Slept good. Went to bed late, woke up late. That's how I like to do it.
Yep, comics life, right?
It's not bad. It's not bad, yeah.
Yeah. So what's late for you?
Last night was like 3 a.m.
So...
that's pretty late for me. Usually I'm more like between... It's rare that I go to bed before midnight, but usually before 2 a.m. So between midnight and 2 a.m. is when I go to sleep.
So you usually don't go to the 4 a.m. bars?
Well, I live in New York, so everywhere is a 4 a.m. bar.
Wait, all bars in New York are open till 4?
They can be if they want to be, yeah.
What? I did not realize this.
It's a big reason why New York is the way it is. A bunch of alcoholics. Also, no one in New York wants to go home because they all live with 3 roommates in a shoebox. So there's a reason places stay open late.
Oh, yeah. I didn't even think of that. Home isn't really a home. It's just a place to keep your stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Because in New York, everyone's doing everything.
That's true. And also, I've noticed lately, I've been paying attention that there's a lot of bar makeouts in New York City. And I think it's because, the alternative is being yeah, you want to go home and meet my 3 roommates?
Oh, so you think, in New York, a lot of people just make out at the bar? And
I think people do everything at the bar,
yeah.
On the subway.
Mm-hmm.
People are, clipping their toenails and putting makeup on the subway. Everyone in New York is just, anything they can do to avoid actually going home because they don't like where they live.
Wow. Do you like where you live?
I do, but I'm weird.
Yeah, what neighborhood do you live in New York?
I live in Fort Greene, Brooklyn.
No idea where that is.
It's in Brooklyn, kind of in between Williamsburg and Park Slope.
Okay. I was I was there a month ago. I stayed near Bushwick and Ridge something
Ridgewood?
Yeah, Bushwick and Ridgewood. So kind of on the border of that. So, but yeah, New York's cool. It's oddly warmer than Chicago, so I find that a little odd. Yeah,
about 10 degrees usually, I feel like, is New York has on Chicago usually, which is it's an important 10 degrees. It makes a difference.
It does. It's amazing. 10 degrees makes such a difference. So, but you started you lived here first, right?
I did live in Chicago, yeah.
Mm-hmm. And then you moved to New York, but you weren't doing comedy until you moved to New York?
That's true, yeah. I was doing music as a sort of my main creative outlet when I was here. I was in a rock and roll band, and then I moved to New York and was doing some acoustic singer-songwriter stuff and realized I don't like acoustic singer-songwriters and I don't really want to be one. And at the same time, I was going to all these cool comedy shows in the East Village and seeing some amazing comedy stuff happen, and that actually felt more rock and roll to me than the music stuff I was seeing in New York. And
that's interesting.
Gave it a try, and it was a rabbit hole that I fell into, and now here I am 10 years later.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like a lot of comedians are man, I want to be a rock star, a musician, but they, I feel like that's both, and you've done both. So what was the name of your band?
Plastics Hi-Fi.
Okay.
Which everyone always got wrong, which was endlessly annoying.
What was that from?
Well, we originally named Plastics based on the line from The Graduate, where he talks about the future is one word, plastics.
Oh, yes.
But then we had a really important show at Metro, and right before we were printing up the posters, we found out there was some Japanese punk band from like the 70s called The Plastics. And so then we were like, well, why don't we just add hi-fi to the end? But then we had 10 years of people being like, so it's plastic sci-fi? I'm like, no, that's not what it is at all. So if you're ever starting a band, make sure to pay attention to people being able to pronounce the name of your band easily, because it was an issue that did not go away for us. But
well, the Wonders, they were almost spelled Theoneters.
oh, that's not good at all, yeah.
So there's always different things like that. Wow. So you got a taste of comedy and you're like, I don't want to be a musician anymore, and you completely gave that up, or did you continue doing it?
I was doing some music stuff when I started doing comedy, and then eventually I was like, maybe I should stop splitting my loyalties and try to focus on one thing and be good at it. And, at that point it seemed like comedy was a better fit for me than music stuff.
Have you ever done music comedy where you're combining both?
I'm not a huge fan of musical comedy because I actually like music and I actually like comedy.
So you wanted to be talented on both fronts.
Well, I feel like musical comedy a lot of times it's like, yeah, I'm not talented enough to really be a successful musician, and I'm not funny enough to be a successful comedian, but you know what? I can be mediocre at both, and people will love it because I've combined them. And people love musical comedy. Like they just like the same joke in said in prose on stage. People are like, that's not funny. But then if you put a melody behind it, people are like, that's hilarious.
Yeah,
it's like a magic trick.
It is, and that's another way that you can tell a joke again. If it's a music song, they want to hear that again. If it's funny,
right? Totally.
And I think that's the big difference I find between musicians and comedians, aside from the medium, but how the audience reacts to it.
Yeah.
So, like for your band, you probably repeated some of your favorite songs at the same venues the next time you played.
All the time.
With comedians, I feel like there's this different pressure to not repeat stuff. Or if you have an album come out, to throw all your jokes away and start from new. Yeah,
definitely. You got to be like a shark with comedy. Keep moving forward. Yeah, because I think people, like, once they've heard your stuff before, you lose all the surprise. And comedy's all about surprise. Whereas with music, people like what they know. They like, play the hits.
I guess that does get annoying for musicians that are trying to break out or do a different genre or do something else.
Yeah, it's like one of those things. It's a gift and a curse, I suppose, of, oh, man, my fans want to just hear the same song over and over again. It's like, yeah, well, you got fans who want to hear something. That sounds pretty good.
So you were a lead singer and a guitarist. I have a question. Did you get more attention from women or people in general as a musician or as a comedian after shows?
It's interesting because I had a long-term girlfriend during most of my band years, but I think women definitely like dudes in bands more than dudes who are comedians, because a musician can be like, I wrote this song about how beautiful your eyes are, but a comedian's like, I wrote this joke about how weird your lazy eye is. It's not nearly as appealing to the opposite gender.
Did you ever do that? Would you like tell multiple girls you wrote a song for them and it was just...
No, I would never lie about that.
You would never lie about that. No, that's good.
They would know if...
You wouldn't lie because you wouldn't get away with it. Is that why?
Basically, yeah. I tell the truth all the time, but mostly because I'm a terrible liar.
Yeah, I'm not a good... I don't like I'll lie when it's like usually something good. Like if I'm surprising somebody, like I've surprised I surprised my mom going to visit her, and like I'm like lying. I'm like, oh yeah, I'm going out in Chicago tonight, blah blah blah, and then just arrive and surprise her in Louisville. So I've done that. So. But, like, that's a different kind of lie. That's, like, a lie that will bring someone joy.
Sure. You're playing. That's fun. No, I wind up telling the truth a lot. And people say that they like the truth, but it's not always. So
are you someone that, like, you're, like, blunt truth-telling all the time?
Sure. Yeah. Why not? Let's get to it.
Wow. Interesting. Has that gotten you in trouble?
All the time. Yeah. It's a life of trouble.
A life of trouble.
Yeah.
Well, what kind of things have you, like, well, I mean, like, I guess for me, it's like I try to filter myself. I'm like, oh, I could be this honest, or I could tell them, like, just a hint of it, you know?
I'm trying to get better at that. I'm trying to, also, like, judgmental things or negative things, like, don't always need to be volunteered. Like, sometimes it's better to just, if someone really asks you, then maybe you tell them. But you don't need to volunteer negative information is something that I've been working on.
I like that. I believe in energy, and I like believe in like being around people that are hopefully positive energy, that kind of thing. And if
Sure.
you're bringing, if you're walking to a room and you're bringing a negative kind of energy, it kind of just changes. And even in comedy shows, you can feel when the audience is when they're a little off or negative, or there's some different. And that can change like at a drop of the hat, which is crazy.
No, I'm a big energy person too, and so then you got to be if you're sensitive to that in others, you got to be responsible for your own vibe that you're bringing into interactions, and whether it's off stage or on. I think a lot of times the energy that you're putting out into the world is what's going to reflect back at you. So
Karma, guys.
Yeah, or just sort of vibes. It's just like we're all the world is a mirror sometimes, and it's like if you're putting out drama or negativity or judgment, you'll get that back, and if you're putting out optimism and positivity, then you'll get that back.
Oh, I think that's good.
Not to sound like a hippie.
Do you have crystals or anything?
I do have crystals.
You do?
Yeah, I like stones.
What crystals do you carry them on you, or is it?
I got some in my backpack right now. Actually.
What kinds do you have?
I have a kyanite stone that I got in Woodstock recently, and then I have a crystal that I bought at a flea market, and I think those are the two that I have on me right now.
So what do they mean? Like, what are they supposed to be good? Like, are they supposed to give you a
The kyanite is supposed to repel negative energy, actually, sticking with the theme. And the crystal, I don't know if it has any specific properties, but it's just your generic crystal that's, I kind of like the way it looked and it felt good. And that's something that I've been turned on to by a friend of mine. Is like, if you just pick up a stone and, it feels good to you, or there's something about it is attracting you, then that's the one for you, as opposed to like any stone, like this stone, all kyanite means this, maybe not necessarily. Maybe there's one that's like, because I remember telling this friend of mine that I bought a crystal online and I lost it like a day later, and how I was annoyed. He's like, no, that wasn't the right crystal for you. That's good. Like, if you lost it immediately, then that you didn't want that in your life anyway. I was like, all right, I like the way you're framing this.
So you believe in the power of crystals and the energy that they bring, or do you think that it makes you feel good to have it just in case, or?
All the above. I think it's also the idea of a talisman or some object that you invest energy or belief or faith into in some sense, then it will provide back almost like a placebo effect. Like, even if it's not real, there's something about you just believing in it that makes it real. And then also I do think like stones, like there's certain... I feel like, Woodstock, New York, or Sedona, Arizona, or Taos, or, there's certain maybe places that have a certain energy to them, or,
or history.
There's stones or things that happen there, or, there's ghosts inside the ground, and you can, chip off a little bit of it and wear it around your neck.
Chip off a bit of the ghost. They come back and haunt you for it.
Yeah, ghosts can be good. There's a lot of ghost shaming going on in our culture. What about positive ghosts?
Okay, do you have ghost friends? Is this what you're doing? Are you stepping up and defending your ghost friends?
I don't have ghost friends, but like I like Jack White a lot, and I remember hearing him be interviewed and talking about, like, he always plays like these like $50 Dan Electro guitars from like the 1950s, and he talks about how he doesn't want a new guitar because he likes a guitar that he has to fight with and wrestle with, and that goes out of tune, and like he believes it has ghosts inside it. It's like it already has melodies and songs inside of it, and now he's working with something that already is a source of musicality in a way, whereas a brand new instrument doesn't have that same thing. It's just got sterile factory vibes.
Wow, that's really fascinating. I like that a lot, because it's like, it's almost as if, again, going back to the theme of putting energy to an object, if you have a bunch of musicians that have put energy towards this object, and it's been passed around or sold and resold and replayed and done all this different things, and that brings a certain energy to the object. Yeah,
same thing with like vintage clothing versus brand new stuff.
Do you wear vintage?
I do sometimes. I don't think I'm wearing anything now, but I like vintage stuff. I feel like as I get older, like I should wear vintage stuff less, because then it just seems like, I feel like it starts to blur together, where people are like, maybe he really is from the 70s. So like, okay, I'm not that old.
I don't think people would think you're that old.
But yeah, I like vintage stuff. Yeah, for similar reasons. It's nice to, like, if there's a story behind it, or especially like if I have stuff that like belonged to my dad or something like that. It's nice to, feel like you're wearing something that, has stories built into it.
Yeah. Oh, that's cool. I guess it's always weird when it's like you see the people that are like super hipster with like the curly mustaches and the beards and everything. They're like, yeah, everything I have is vintage and all that.
Yeah,
So-
it's like if it's all vintage, that seems a little costumey. to
Yeah,
me.
I feel like there's a certain level. It's like there's the way that we are, but then the heightenedness of it is so annoying. Like the people that go to the extreme. They're like, oh yes, everything vintage because I want to feel everything. I know the story behind every single thing I'm wearing.
Yep.
And then never shut up.
Yeah, no, I also have a big thing about like if someone does tell me they like a piece of clothing I'm wearing, I feel the need to tell them how little I spent on it. That's a big.
Everybody does, and women too. Like especially like so many conversations in women's bathrooms or in lines. They're like, oh my god, I love that shirt. Oh yeah, I got this for $7. Like it's some sort of. I think the way it is. I've thought about this because I think it's one of two things. One, they don't want people to think that you're spending too much money on how you look. And maybe this is a Midwest thing or East Coast, because I don't think it's the same way in LA. I just got back from there. I don't think it's the same thing. But, and it's, at the same time, they want to almost show that, yes, I got a deal on it. Like, I'm frugal. So it's like showing twofold. They don't want you to think that you have a lot of money, that you're still relatable.
Well, that's what I think is interesting about it too, because it almost seems like you're like downplaying the compliment or like, being like, oh, no, like that. But actually what you're doing is like, yeah, not only do I look good, but I really have a good sense of value. Like, not only do I look good, but I'm super smart. So you're actually like trying to turn it into two compliments, but under the disguise of like, being humble.
And I also know the best places to get the best deals. And then that conversation happens like, oh my God, where'd you get this? Oh yes, I can tell you this. I'll send you this.
I have really good taste and I'm really smart. I'm really good with money. So I just want you to know it's all of those things.
Yeah. I think it's so interesting as some people take compliments. I've definitely heard people like being like, oh yeah, that looks like nice. I know. You're like, oh great. Yeah.
Yeah. Or that you're like, I love your shirt. Oh, I love your shirt. It's like, do you really? You didn't have to.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not looking for reciprocation here.
Yeah. Especially after like, if somebody's saying something to you about your set afterwards, I always feel awkward. So it's like, good set. And like, I don't say anything. No, I'm someone that doesn't. If I don't think they had a good set, I don't say it.
Well, then it's insulting, especially if they know they didn't have a good set. You're like, oh yeah, you too. And then, come on,
Yeah, I mean, they know if they had a good set or not.
Comedians are so weird about any exchange. Like, the amount of handshakes that I have with comedians where they're like looking the other way while shaking my hand always like blows me away. Like one of these things where you're like,
it's like,
good job. Yeah. I'm just like, well, this, now I just feel like insulted. We didn't even have to do that at all,
Yeah. it is a weird thing how people how we react to each other. I think there's a different level of ego. I think maybe the same thing with musicians or.
Well, in comedy, you just wind up seeing the same people over and over. So you might have like weak ties to them, but you still see them, like,
like
5 times a month sort of thing. So now it's this strange thing where it's like, do we know each other? I mean, we kind of do, but.
There are so many people that we had hung out on multiple occasions, but we weren't even like Facebook friends. Like I've definitely hung out with groups of people and like didn't know their last name for like a month. Right. And it's like, oh, I've just seen you around. I feel like I know you, but we haven't actually had that conversation. I just see you at the same places I go to all the time. But how was it starting in New York? Starting comedy in New York?
I mean, I wouldn't recommend it.
Yeah.
No, I mean, I think like a city like Chicago or Boston or San Francisco, it's just easier to get stage time, I think. Whereas in New York, you're always competing against people who are like really good. So, I mean, the pro side is it makes you like up your game and like kind of you have to compete and like, in some ways I think it accelerates you, but in other ways it's just like really tough to get stage time. And like I remember coming to Chicago and seeing people who were like 2 years in and they were like doing like a half hour on the road and getting all these long sets in, and meanwhile like 2 years in New York you're just scraping like going to mics where you're doing like 2 minutes in front of 18 comics who couldn't care less. And so it's and the other negative thing I think is like you can get seen too early, so like then you might if you do get on a good show but you're not fully formed yet as a comedian, you might kind of get your reputation solidified or set in a way before you're ready to be seen. Whereas if you can start off somewhere like here and get really good and then go to New York, I think there's some advantages to that.
Oh, that's cool. And Do you also...
But I guess one thing I will add, no matter what, even if you move to New York, there's going to be some period of eating shit. Like, that's sort of like the New York circuit is like for 6 months, no one's going to care about you or give a shit who you are. And like, they'll assume that you're going to get spit out before you.
Oh, is that the thing?
Well, there's a lot of people who go there and then after like 3 months they're gone. So you just sort of like, like sometimes you just got to hang in there for a while before people start taking you seriously.
Yeah, and so you've been there the whole 10 years then.
It's true, yeah.
I guess the good thing about it is you can get a lot of stage time there. I mean, you can get a lot of like mics and reps in.
There's definitely a lot of shows that you can do.
Not necessarily stage time, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, I mean, you can do like 3 shows a night and, kind of, subway around and, kind of it's up to you how motivated you are. You can determine how much you get up.
Yeah, that makes sense. I feel the same way with here, but I feel like motivation wanes definitely when it starts to get colder for a lot of people.
I could see that being an issue around here for sure.
Yeah. And so what was it that, do you remember the show or something that made you realize, hey, I want to do this instead of music?
I think just right out of the gate, I was relatively good at doing stand-up. I think in part just because I've been on stage so much in another capacity, so like I was comfortable in that way. So at first I thought I was like, oh, I'm just like a natural at this and I'm meant to do it. And like I think for about 6 months I felt that way, and then all of a sudden I started to realize like, oh shit, have so much further to go. And then it sort of turned into just some challenge of like, okay, this is what it takes to get really good at this. Do I want to, and at that point, maybe it was like, I was already into it in a way that's like, okay, well, I gotta keep pushing forward and see where it goes. But it does feel a little bit like a rabbit hole of like, you just sort of, hey, let me try this and see how it goes. And then all of a sudden it's like 10 years later and you're like, where did my life go? Oh my God. But yeah, it's definitely addictive. When stand-up's good, it's like the best thing in the world.
Yeah. I love that high, just like when it's, you got them in your pocket, it's fucking great. It's tough to compete with. It's tough to go back home and just watch TV or something. Well, there's very few things in life that you can get that immediate like response, that immediate like, yes, they love it or no, they don't. Like very few things in life that you get that like right away.
I agree.
And I think stand-up's one of the few forms of art that you can get that.
I agree, yeah.
We're talking about the getting addicted to laughter and all of that, right?
Yeah, you gotta get addicted to something, right? Could be worse.
Yeah, it definitely could be worse, right? So you like, I'm guessing because you're a comic now, you like the laughter better than like the cheers of a crowd after a music show.
Well, after a band plays a song, everyone claps whether they liked it or not. So something I love about laughter is that it's like a primal response. So like I prefer laughter to applause, even like in a joke setting, just because like applause is people thinking, they'll be like, oh yes, I approve of that. But like laughter is just this involuntary response that's like feels to me like real communication, and there's something I always like about that. But being in a band is cool because you feel like a gang up there, and you got like volume, and if you're,
and there's that energy too. That I guess it's very different. But one thing I do like about comedy is you could have someone that doesn't want to laugh. You can tell they don't want to laugh. Right. But when you make them laugh, like that's really fun because they can't help it.
Yeah. Well, that is interesting. How I think this is very common with comedians. How like you can be killing in a room, but there's one person who's not digging it, and all you can see is that one person who's there, like one person checking their phone or folding their arms. Yeah.
I hate the crossing the arms.
It's like we can't get past it. Like we need everyone.
Yeah, it's just we need everyone's approval. Is that? I guess.
Yeah. Well, it seems like a hole with a bucket in it, or you know what I mean, a bucket with a hole in it, and they're the hole. Like, come on, I'm trying to fill up this room with laughter, and it's all emptying through you black hole.
It's also the energy too. Like they're just giving off a negative energy. You know?
But then you focus on that person, and then you lose the rest of the room, and it's like, well, I should have just ignored that person and just not worried about it.
Yeah, probably. So what's your? You got an album that you're recording, right?
Tomorrow, yeah.
Yeah. Well, this won't come out for a few weeks, so we'll.
So yeah, I have an album that I recorded.
Yes. Do you know when that'll be out?
I don't. Probably a couple months from now. On 800 Pound Gorilla is the label that I'm doing it on, and yeah.
And this is your first?
It's my first album, yeah. First stand-up album.
In 10 years. So 10 years, yeah.
Yeah.
So that's awesome. So are you someone are you going to throw out all your material after?
I don't know if I'll do that right away. I think it's there's definitely some stuff I'm excited to throw out, and it'll be good motivation to write new. I think there's other stuff that is like strong or newer or something like that I think I might hold on to for a little bit. But I think the general idea is to keep moving forward.
Yeah. Well, you change a lot in 10 years, so I'm sure you've thrown out a lot of stuff.
That's true. Yeah.
Do you remember like your first great joke? Do you remember like your first time you like really were like, okay, I can do this? Or
yeah, I mean, I had one joke that did really well. That you want me to do it? Is that
oh no, you don't have to do it. But I was just curious, like the memory of like, because you've been doing it for so long. It's like, do you still remember like that feeling?
Sure. Yeah. No, I remember it. Yeah. I don't know. I think it was weird for me. Like my first 5 or 10 or 15 minutes was like surprisingly easy and actually like pretty decent. Like a lot of people are like, oh man, my stuff was so like, I think I had some decent stuff, but then at some point, like I think I was delusional and that was good. And at some point it seemed to come into focus, like how hard comedy is and what it actually takes. And then at that point, I think it was like, felt like starting from scratch again.
So what was your delusion? You just thought, oh, like I can just
like I'm a natural. This is other people is going to take them years to get good, but I'm just I'm just like fit right in. Don't worry about it. I'm just can do this easily.
And what was it, like 6 months in or like something like that? Like you were just like,
yeah.
You're like, oh no. What made you realize it was hard?
I think I was fortunate enough early on to do some good shows too, and just thinking that's what it was like. And then like after a while, then I was like, okay, now go do a bunch of mics and like crappy shows in the back of a bar where like people didn't even know they were going to watch a comedy show. And and then all of a sudden it was like, oh, this is really brutal and difficult. And like maybe my jokes that I thought were so good are good in front of like a hot crowd, but like the real challenge is taking like a cold room or people who don't care and turning them into people who are laughing, and that's a much higher degree of difficulty. And
handling that level of rejection and that sort of thing.
Yeah, well, I don't really feel human emotions anyway, so that's
wait. You don't feel human emotions?
Not really.
Like you don't feel happy or sad or angry
joy,
or
pain, it's whatever. We're all gonna die anyway. What's the difference, really?
Really?
Sure.
So you kind of look at all life in that way.
I'm just, emotionally disconnected in a way that, it's probably somewhat unhealthy, but c'est la vie.
Well, there's a lot of people that do that. Does that affect your relationships, though?
No, it's been pretty detrimental in a lot of areas of my life, but also positive in other aspects. I think my highs aren't that high, but my lows aren't that low. I think I'm pretty like level-headed about most stuff and just sort of, calm and rational, but maybe not. I've been trying to get better at being like in touch with my feelings and emoting and being
feel like
vulnerable.
A Vulcan a little bit.
Yeah, I don't know. It's just sort of like I think just I had this idea of in my head of what masculinity was and being a man and being sort of closed off from my emotions and not wanting to be a victim and all this stuff and sort of I feel like society's definition of manhood and what's appropriate has changed over my lifetime and my father's lifetime, and so it's just sort of been a recalibration on like, okay, well maybe you can sort of be open and it's not weakness to express your vulnerabilities or what's things that you're worried about or things that make you feel bad or things like of that nature.
Yeah, because I guess the generation above us, like, I mean, my dad spoke a lot, but like I think like his father was very like strong silent type, don't talk, they might have, and I don't think a lot of this might have to do with wars and that kind of thing. Like it's just things you don't want to talk about. No, we're not going to discuss this war. We're not going to,
And
it's kind of
just that was the way. That was your job as a man. Just like go make some money and then shut up and don't talk about shit and you don't complain and you just do your thing and like that's good enough.
God, that sounds kind of boring. That sounds like a boring life, though.
There's a lot of I think there were a lot of repression going on and people bottled up and it would come out in unfortunate ways sometimes.
So you think, did you grow up with brothers or sisters or anything?
Older sister. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And then you grew up in Chicago area?
No, suburbs of New York.
Suburbs of New York. Oh, yeah. Gotcha. Like Connecticut, New Jersey?
North of the city, Dobbs Ferry in New York, so Westchester County.
It's still in New York, yeah. Nice. Wow. So yeah, that's an interesting way that you're so aware that the reason that you're not as emotional are because of the male expectations in our society.
I think that's one contributing factor. I think also there might, I've seen some stuff in my life, and maybe that helped me, put up my guard and like not want to indulge in feeling bad for myself or others around me, and so then you kind of just sort of push through things and try not to dwell on things that are negative.
That's a good point. You're basically like, I've seen some shit, and that's made me like step away. Yeah.
I mean, there's and also I just think genetically, like half Russian, half Israeli, and those are two cultures that are big on not revealing emotions that much, and so that might be part of it too. So maybe some combination of all these things.
Gotcha. Have you ever been to Russia or any of your own?
I have, yeah.
Yeah? How did you like it?
I liked it a lot. But yeah, Russian people are definitely got a poker face on all the time.
You're right. You're right. I liked it a lot. No smile. No.
Yeah. No, I remember I dated a Russian girl in New York for like a month or two, and then I was just convinced she hated me. And so like I just never asked her out again. And then I ran into her on the train. She's like, "Why you no call me?" I'm like, "I don't know. I thought you didn't like me." She's like, "You should call me." I'm like, "Well, you should act like you like me, because so far I think you just hate every second you're with me." She's like, "No, you should call me." And so I'm like, okay, well, this is weird. But then I've met enough Russians in my life to realize, like, yeah, they think like smiling is some sort of sign of weakness, so they just don't do it.
They think smiling is a sign of weakness?
Yeah, it's like something that Western people do. But it's like,
what about laughter?
Oh no, why would you do that?
Why would you laugh?
People will know you're vulnerable. They'll invade.
Actually, I've heard that when you're laughing is the only time when you're really like, where you're not afraid.
Well, laughter itself is a signal that there's something surprising. You're signaling to the rest of your tribe that something surprising is happening, but it's not threatening.
Yeah.
That's why I was like, I think of comedy sometimes as there's like a hierarchy of needs, and the first thing that needs to happen is that people need to feel comfortable and like in an environment that's safe and focused, and that they feel confident that you know what you're doing, and all of that has to happen before you can ever achieve laughter. So if you just go out and tell jokes in a room full of people who are like not sure where they are, what's happening, it's not going to work, because the first thing you need to do, which hopefully the host does, is like get everyone on board and unified and feeling good about what's happening.
You also got to show them who you are, because they don't know you. You know, so it's also doing that.
Yeah, but if people don't feel safe, they're not going to laugh a lot.
Yeah.
And Russians never feel safe, so there you go. Perhaps with good reason. They keep having wars there.
Yeah, I mean, I guess they do have a reason not to feel safe. Do you feel like comedy or music, has improved your relationships, or no?
I mean, it's probably made me like, I think I'm a pretty like open and communicative and straightforward person in a way, and I think it's helped me in some ways. But if you 6 nights a week you're going to be out doing shows and other stuff, that takes a certain type of person, if you're talking about like dating wise, to be cool with that, and it sort of limits the pool. Yeah,
I think that's the same way with anyone with like a late night thing, musician, comedian, anyone that's like super late night, writers even too. Yeah,
there's something about being out 6 nights a week, and from 8 p.m. to 1 a.m. that's I think rightfully so. Some girls who I've dated have had issues with that.
Yeah, I've had guys had issues with me hanging out with comedians till like odd times in the night and just being like, hey, like, what? Are you sure you're just friends? Yeah. There's no way. Yeah, we're definitely friends. That kind of thing. So, but New York is probably like, what's the scene out there like? Is dating I feel like Chicago's we've gotten very lazy with the online shop cart mentality.
Yeah, same thing in New York. I mean, I think in New York everyone's always like, oh, there's someone better right around the corner, so it's a constant attempt to upgrade, and a lot of flakiness, and people just like, I've kind of given up on a lot of online dating just because it seems like so often it's just like 20 text messages back and forth, just trying to set up a plan to meet, and then that never even happens. It's like, what is the point of all this? I don't need a pen pal. That's someone who I just try to organize plans with, and it never happens.
Oh yeah, I'm not a fan of texting. I don't like texting a lot. I like talking in person or maybe talking on the phone if it's important and you can't be there.
Right.
But I'm like, if you're going to take the time to like be texting back and forth with me for blah, 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 just like, let's hang out. Let's not.
I agree.
I don't like, I think text also can be read very wrong ways sometimes. And if the person is in a bad mood, they'll read all your text messages as like combative or in a bad mood.
Sure.
Or
I'm always afraid that I'm going to be one of those people who a girl like screenshots the texts and then sends it to all her friends. Like that's my biggest fear is being that dude.
You're afraid of being that
the
that
dude
guy?
who said the corny or like weird or angry or bizarre. Like I'm just like, look, I don't want any part of being part of your show and tell of dating horror stories.
Because we all have a lot, and we do share them, to be honest. We're like, hey, this guy texted me this
Well,
thing.
apparently men are terrible from what I hear, and so I'm just trying to, like, not that I'm that much better, but I'm just trying to not be public with it at least.
Yeah, that's smart. At least you're aware about that. I think some people just don't care, and they're like, whatever.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel it must be weird, like, because I'm older, like, I feel like it must be weird to be a dude who grew up in this era of, like, you're just reading all the time about, like, the patriarchy and equal rights and rape culture and consent and all these things, and then at the same time you're just watching porn nonstop from the age of 12 where it's a completely different scenario, and then you're supposed to be like a 15-year-old boy and you're supposed to like consolidate both these two things into like, well, this is how you treat the opposite sex. And I'm like, I can totally see how it's like a minefield for young people to try to figure out what's the reality here.
I think it is an issue, especially with the internet, with getting access to porn too early, because I think that is also making them desensitized to what's going on. And by the time they're 18, they're wanting to do choking and like other crazy
totally
things that they, like the first time they have sex, trying weird shit that people shouldn't be trying till they're like, 5 years into a relationship, that kind of shit.
That's right. They're trying to start at the, advanced level of the video game. You got to do level 1 first.
The thing is that they're used to just playing a one-player game, and once there's a two-player game, you could be crushing it at the one-player game. When the second player comes in, you got to coordinate that. You got to make sure you're not leaving the other person behind.
That's true.
You got to make sure you're giving them their... I'm trying to find good analogies of this. You're trying to make sure that you're giving them the good mushroom, you're not... You
can't just race for the gorilla. You gotta do it as a team. Yeah, totally. It's also like porn is like so... It's like everyone's trying to outdo each other with like how weird or kinky or perverted it is. And then if you start thinking that's normal, like, I don't know. I just think it's really messed up. But.
Well, the thing is that when you were younger, like, did you have to like go out of your way to try to find a Playboy that like
it was like, really exciting. Like if I got like some Playboy book of lingerie and I'd keep it under my bed and be like a special thing. And
it was something you had to make an effort to go get.
Sure.
That was like something you had to get someone to buy it for you. You had to get it from you'd almost have like your own little adventure to get that, right?
Definitely.
Now they don't have that, and I think that's the problem why men I think are so lazy dating now. I still consider them boys. Most millennials are boys, but they get they get this thing because it was so easy for them. Like they just Google something on a computer and they can have it right there.
Yeah, you had to work to have a fetish. Like, no, you had to like use your imagination, and now they just give you a menu of like 30 things that like when I was like 15, I was like, I didn't even know that was an option. And like now it's just like, oh yeah, of course, I'm one of the million people who loves 1/16 Filipino MILFs or whatever it is. And
is that how specific they get?
Nah, I'm exaggerating a little bit, but you know what I'm saying. It's just like you used to have to, if you really wanted some weird thing, it's because you had an imagination and it just came to you. You're like, oh my God, I like this thing that I imagined or I saw once in some random art movie or something. And now it's just like, oh yeah, this is what I'm into. And it's just, I think it's dangerous.
Yeah, I think I agree. I think it can definitely be dangerous. It's also weird for just having them communicate what they want properly because you're brought up watching all this intense stuff. And then it's like you haven't even kissed a girl, but you've watched how many,
Anal, say it. It's always ending in anal. I don't even like anal. Why does every porn have to end in anal? It's like I don't never choose the anal category, and yet it's always ending in anal. I'm just like, I feel like sex now that doesn't end in anal is like a joke without a punchline. It's like, how do we get to this point?
Yeah, I don't know, but it's definitely a big thing. Like, I'm like, that kind of thing can be fun, but usually when I'm like in a thing with somebody, like if I'm, but it's like...
I'm totally happy with vaginas and mouths, so I'm a real throwback that way, I guess.
I don't know. I don't know why, but it's been, the last several years have been really heavy with that. I don't know. Maybe it's the songs.
Well, I think it's like a symbol of our society where we have something that's perfectly fine and good enough, and we're like, no, it needs to be even more. And it's like, okay, but like this might ruin everything. It's like, no, I need it to be as intense as it's like. Well, there was no problem
before.
Yeah, I don't know, but I think it's and then it becomes the new normal, and then people don't even realize that it's strange.
Hold on, I have to go back to the whole thing. You're like, every porn ends in anal. Like, I didn't realize like people actually watch porn till the end. Does that actually happen? Yes.
Yeah, why not? Well, then you go to the end, and then you figure out which part you like best, and then you go back to that. That's my. I mean, also it's like 12 minutes. It's not like I'm watching War and Peace or something.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah. No, so would you like to watch to find out what happens in the story?
Sure, let's see where it goes. Let's see what happens here.
What's the weirdest porn story you've ever seen, like the premise of it?
They don't even have stories anymore.
They don't?
Yeah. So I guess I'm into these casting videos, which is really weird because all this bad acting of like they're pretending like they're auditioning for something. But sometimes I like, I think I'm weird, but I like that turns me on almost more than the actual sex is like watching
them get rejected.
In this scenario.
Watching people fail in audition videos.
No, they're succeeding in these videos.
Oh, okay.
It's a very unorthodox audition. That's all.
Yes. Do you ever audition for things like that? Have you ever been in a situation?
For porn? No,
not for porn. I mean, like for casting stuff.
Occasionally I audition, but I don't do too much stuff like that.
Yeah. So that's always the weird thing is if you go and you see like 20 other people that look exactly like you, and you're like, oh.
Or they put the camera on you and they're like, say your name, and then they just pan down and then just like pan up slowly, and then you're like, oh my god, is this what it's like to be a woman? That was terrible.
Yes, I was thinking that exactly when you were saying the pan up. That's so annoying.
As a dude, you're like, ooh, gross.
But you don't notice.
Wait, that's what I do to every girl when I see her all the time.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm the gross one.
And guys, most of the time they don't even notice. It's just like almost like a habitual thing
when they're doing it.
Yeah. They don't even mean to. And I mean, I assume they don't mean to. Maybe they do.
Yeah, they mean to. They just don't mean to get caught. That's all.
Again, with the lying, it's like the same thing. It's like you don't lie because you're not good at it, right?
Yeah.
Guys, don't do that. So you really don't. I'm sorry, I'm still stuck on the emotion thing. You really don't like feel.
I might be exaggerating a little bit.
Okay.
No, I do feel, but then I repress it.
Okay.
Because showing emotion is a sign of weakness.
Ah.
And so this is just how strong I am, that I'm completely bottled up and, filled with subconscious rage and grind my teeth at night and, can't sustain a relationship, which is clearly, the right path.
Yes. Well, I mean, relationships always seem to come and go. Comedy's always going to be there for you, right? Not always there for you, but always there. Comedy will always be there.
She's a complicated mistress. Comedy.
Yeah.
No, I mean, I'm exaggerating somewhat, but there's some truth in what I've said, but that's also stuff I've been working on and just trying to be self-aware and notice patterns and try to, you can make whatever decisions you want to make, but, just be doing them with a conscious mind and know what you're doing and why you're doing it, as opposed to just being dragged around by impulses that maybe aren't leading you where you actually want to go.
So are you a previously impulsive person and then you're like reformed and you're no longer impulsive?
I'm a bit of a pleasure seeker.
Okay.
And that does not always lead one towards things that are, sustainable or maybe where you want to be.
Or something you should be doing every day, or every week.
So just trying to notice that pattern and, just not repeat the same mistakes. Although
that's smart. I mean, that's.
Or if you do repeat the same mistakes, be like, well, maybe that's not a mistake. Maybe that's what you want to do. Are you okay with that?
Yeah.
And
are you okay with holding that crystal for a while? Like keeping that in your.
Kind of. Sort of like being like, okay, well, maybe in society's view, what I'm doing isn't the best path, but maybe it's what I actually want to do, and it's okay, and maybe I don't need to do what society tells me to do.
Yeah, maybe you don't have to have that 9 to 5, and you can, enjoy doing comedy and not make it, like just hanging out, doing shit. I don't know. That's interesting. All right, when was the last time you cried?
Oh, I cry a lot. I think like actual tears. I think like the day after Trump was elected, I cried a little bit.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
definitely.
I just felt bad. I felt bad for like our society. Like it felt like we had just taken a step backwards like 20 years.
Yeah.
You know, I felt bad for like women who I knew who were really excited about Hillary, and now all of a sudden had to confront this idea that this guy who's like grabs him by the pussy and all that stuff. Not only did he win, but like he got the majority of like women's votes. And like I think that is some really interesting conversations around that and feminism and just women with other women. That's, you know, was really sort of that's sad.
That was a very sad. That was a very sad week for me. It's that crazy thing you don't expect, and you're like, what is this saying about society? You know, is this
also the conversations we have in public versus what's really happening? How the voting booth is sort of like the last safe place to be racist or sexist or like a caveman, and like, you know, like there's all this stuff that you can't say in public anymore because people will condemn you or think you're a caveman. But like, you know what? Once you're in that voting booth, that's the whole point. It's anonymous. You can do anything you want.
Yeah.
A lot of people said they weren't voting for him, and then a lot of them voted for him. So something was going on there, you know.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. It's there's a lot of. I mean, I feel. You know, like, I mean, I voted in Illinois. I knew that was going to go blue, but still, it's like, but I mean, she did get the popular, 2.2 million or something more. So like that's astronomical. I think what they need to do is either reappropriate, because California is way more of a bigger percentage than what they get in terms of electoral votes and stuff. Because that all stems from, I think this after the Civil War or something like that, they gave them more for the slaves, I think they gave them more electoral votes in the South.
All right.
Yeah, they were giving them what they were getting for the population. I think it was like 2/3 of a person for each slave that they had. So even though the slaves couldn't vote, they still got elected.
3/5.
3/5.
Yes.
My bad.
Which there's a bank called like 5/3 Bank, and it always seems weird to me because I'm always, every time I see that, I'm like 3/5 Bank, no, 5/3 Bank. Okay, that's still weird though.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I don't like, it's like, that's the rules, and he won with those rules.
Yeah,
so,
I know,
you know,
he
it's
won.
like,
Yeah. I'm
I
not
don't
trying
like.
to.
Yeah, I know, but it's like, yeah, I agree that we should change the Electoral College, but right now that's how it's set up. So, you know, figure out how to win within those rules if you're not going to change it.
Yeah, it's definitely been tough, and I think it's. Do you do a lot of political comedy at all?
I've been doing more lately. I didn't used to, but I've been talking about like a lot of like election stuff and.
Yeah. Do you feel it's out of like necessity? It's like you feel like you have to comment on it because this is impacting you so much, or?
A little bit that. Also, I feel like maybe I'm a little bit of a bridge because my dad was definitely like a very Republican, like prosecutor, law and order guy. And, you know, I live in New York, which is filled with like, you know, liberal, you know, sort of very PC, you know, sort of points of view. And my attitude a lot of times is like just sort of recognizing the hypocrisy on either side and like, you know, sort of maybe like not just falling for talking points or like a total red or blue point of view, but like looking at it in some sort of like where's the bullshit and where's the reality sort of angle. And I feel a little bit like maybe I can, you know, I think sometimes your challenge in comedy or any art really is what's the thing that you can say or the perspective that you can bring that not everyone else is going to be able to do. And so that's what I try to do when I talk about stuff. And it's I feel like it's gone pretty well in a way of like, oh, it's been a month and I've got, 5 to 10 minutes of material all about this stuff that seems to be hitting well in a way of like, okay, so maybe my point of view is resonant on some level here in a way that's worth pursuing.
Yeah.
But in the past, I've kind of shied away from it just because I hate like comedians who are too, not hate, but I just don't want to be a comedian who's like lectury or, sort of, I'm not really turned on by a comedian who goes in front of a really liberal crowd and then just, does a bunch of stuff that like liberals are going to applaud. And like, I'd much rather like sort of confront people with points of view that they haven't thought of or like argue, play devil's advocate or like kind of give it to both sides on some way.
Oh, so you probably enjoy like debating with people or like polite arguments, or
Sure.
maybe they get escalated. But do you find yourself in a lot of those types of situations?
Sometimes I do. Yeah. It depends. What I've learned is like you gotta. First of all, don't do it on Facebook because it's just a waste of time. And then also recognize there's some people who enjoy having like a dialogue about things, and then there's some people who just start, getting very emotional and not rational, and then that doesn't work out well. So you gotta kind of read your audience a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah, with Facebook, it's like the audience is everyone you've ever, so
Well, it's a
people.
performance. Everyone's acting like like I've tried to engage in dialogue on issues sometimes, and then all of a sudden people will be like, "Oh, you're mansplaining," or they'll just like start making fun of it. I'm just like, "Look, I was just like, I got the way I felt. I was like, you're lumping me in with the deplorables, but I'm a persuadable. But you're treating me with such vitriol that now I'm like, okay, well, I'm not on this person's side because look at how they're treating me. And so like not that I'm like one of these Trump people, but I can see why those people didn't talk about publicly who they were voting for, but then went ahead and did it, because like I've tried to express myself sometimes in ways where I've been condemned online in a way that like, no, I think I'm pretty open-minded and I'm actually on your side, and I've studied feminism and racial issues a lot, and like I'm desiring a conversation or a dialogue, and then it'll just be like someone shutting me down and just lecturing me, and like I'll just be like, okay, well, I don't know, don't you kind of want me to be on your side? Because now I'm just thinking like you're treating me as if I'm the enemy, so like I guess maybe I'm the enemy.
Yeah. Well, I guess people seem to think that it has to be like one way or the other. There's not a lot of black, a lot of black and white, not as much gray. It's like, you're either liberal or you're conservative. It's not like there's not a lot of like in between types of things.
Well, especially online, which encourages like these really like
Separate
hyper emotional reactions and like either severe like victimization angles or condemnation or attacking someone or shaming someone. Just being calm and nuanced and trying to see both sides is not the way to like get a lot of likes. Whereas being like outrageous and dramatic and is a much better way to be popular online. But I think that's really detrimental to like a healthy dialogue.
And I think that's exactly how our president-elect got a lot of attention to get in there.
Sure.
And my whole thing is every time he tweets, I look up the news and see what he's trying to cover up.
Sure.
Because I feel like a lot of times he's just being controversial to hide other issues that he doesn't want people to pay attention to. It's all like the pizzazz of the performance.
Or all this fake news stuff. Like liberals love fake news stuff just as much as conservatives, just their own flavor of it. Everyone wants their own narrative to be confirmed, or their own like conspiracy theory or whatever awful thing is going to happen. Like both sides are like craving to kind of have whatever their nightmare scenario is confirmed by some publication called usuncut.com or Reverb Press, or I see like liberal people linking. I'm like, come on, this isn't a real publication. What are you doing? This isn't like the reality is scary enough that we don't need to invent phony stuff.
Yeah, I think that is a big issue with the fake news and the whole. There used to be like National Enquirers and things like that where you knew that was like fake news, but now it's everywhere. If you want to read an article, like some people, there's
only two real newspapers anymore, so it's
New York Times,
and the Washington Post, and everything else like is borderline fake news at this point. So it's getting harder and harder to even tell.
Well, the thing is that I think news used to like give you the information, then you thought about it, and now I feel like a lot of the sites are telling you how to feel about it before you've even been able to make a decision.
Because that's what people want. They're like, confirm how. It's not I want the facts. It's like make me feel like the way I think is right. And so now it's like, congratulate me, like tell me, stroke me, like confirm the way I already feel. And that's such a different thing than like, let me discover what the reality of the situation is, even if I don't like it.
That's a good point. Well, maybe it comes from people in my generation, like millennials, being coddled and being like, trophy no matter what, those kinds of situations. Maybe that comes from that a little.
Yeah, I think to me it ties in with like selfie culture and like ego and narcissism, and everyone's now feels like they're so special and like their feelings are the most important thing, and how I feel is more important than whatever your intention was, and that's dangerous. And I think you're seeing it in the political realm of people being like, well, I feel hurt. It's like, okay, but is that more important than winning? Because like you just expressing pain isn't a good way to convince the people who are in the middle. So like sometimes you need like, it's not like express your outrage and pain, even if it's that, not saying it's not legitimate, but like, is that helping you win? Is that helping you persuade those people in the middle? Is that something like, because you know you're lecturing people to acknowledge their white privilege, but like, what if it's some dude who lives in a trailer in like, you know, some, you know, podunk town where everyone he knows is addicted to OxyContin and the factory just closed and no one has any prospects, and then you're like, acknowledge your privilege, and he's like, what privilege? Like, look at me, my life sucks too, you know. And like, it's a dangerous thing, and that doesn't mean that people who are pointing out white privilege are wrong, but it's just a really bad way to persuade those people who voted for Obama but then voted for Trump. Like, clearly there was some issue that they felt like they were being left out on.
I think a lot of people also did feel, and I think Obama did a great job with what he was able to work with.
I love Obama
because he was fighting against a Republican, and I think, especially after the next several years, people will realize that Obama was probably one of our best presidents in modern times, and he's gotten so much.
And such a beautiful human being.
And the thing is, 8 years, no scandals. His daughter's never got in trouble.
No,
he didn't, you know.
He's the best.
And that was, and I mean, like, I've been a supporter of him, but I feel like some people still feel like he didn't do enough, like, to show. But that was a lot of it was because Congress wasn't allowing him to.
Yeah, it's an impossible job. The system is completely fucked. And I think he did the best he could. And also, he was like a role model for, like, you know, like there was children around the country who could look at their parents and be like, look at the president and be like, is that how a grown-up should act? And they could be like, yes, this is how a grown-up should behave. And we had that. And like, I feel like he's like a moral leader, which is such a huge part of that job. And I love like what he stood for and how he expressed himself, and that he would sing like Amazing Grace or Al Green, and like he would, you know, how he'd talk to people, and, you know, when there was a heckler, how he'd tell the crowd not to shout him down, but like, let's like acknowledge that people feel differently. And he's like a healer and like a beautiful human being. And then that our society's like lining up against him as if he's been some sort of failure, like, to me is such like a disconnect.
Well, they were trying to, you know, delegitimize him from the beginning. And that's what they said that they would have done for Hillary too, which is just, I think that's just such a bad way to get into politics. But I'm not a politician, so I don't know. Yeah,
definitely. Well, like, people used to compromise, and then, you know, like Ronald Reagan, Tip O'Neill would get in a room and then like negotiate a compromise, and now it seems like the entire mission is to just shut down the other side and never even talk or meet or anything, and it's just like sad.
It's inefficient.
Yeah, it's bad for America.
But the nice thing about being a comedian, I think, is you can express your political point of views without trying to shove it down someone's throat.
Well, that's the good challenge. Like, you got to make it funny. Where's the punchline? You know, like one of my favorite comedians is a guy named Ted Alexandro, who's out of New York, and I did his show recently. We were talking about it's like, yeah, you can make your points, but it's no punchlines. It's just a lecture. So like, that's the challenge of like, you know, okay, it's good that you got points or have something you want to say, but like, now how's it funny?
Yeah.
Or what are you saying that's surprising? If you're just telling us what we already know everyone thinks, then it's just like, yeah, we get it, dude, whatever.
Or what's unique about it? Because I mean, of course, you've got all the late night TV writers writing jokes and tweets and all that. Yeah. It's like, how can you make your stuff stand out from that?
Totally. Yeah. Good point.
Well, now we're heading towards the end of the podcast. I know we didn't really talk much about sleep, but I know my whole theme is like sleep, dreams, that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. What are and I always ask my guests, what are your dreams and hopes for your future in your life? Career or otherwise?
Okay. I don't know. I'm bad at like long-term planning. I think I just want to keep getting better and like more authentic and more connected to like my true self. And, you know, I think it's interesting because I think I used to feel like, oh yeah, I'm way funnier on stage, and off stage I'm not that funny. And like lately I've been thinking like I think actually I'm funniest off stage when I'm around someone who I'm really comfortable with. And so trying to figure out how to bring that into what I'm actually doing on stage too. And so part of what I'm excited about the album that I'm doing is like to kind of like move on to like a next step, as opposed to like relying on like older material, and kind of like I feel like I'm opening up to like a developmental phase of being more myself on stage. So I guess maybe that's sort of like a loose creative goal that I have.
I like that goal. I kind of share in that goal, trying to be more. I agree with you in terms of, I feel like I'm not that funny when I first meet somebody and we're just talking, but you're right about comfortability. Like once you get comfortable with someone, then you just get, Yeah. So, but yeah, it is that balance of having that almost creating a relationship with the audience.
Totally. Yeah. And, I think just continuing to, I think both doing comedy and living in New York City are things that can like chip away at your soul a little bit and like harden you in certain ways. And so I think part of my ongoing goal is to try to, participate in those things and in that place, but still maintaining some openness to and vulnerability and ability to connect with others in a real, heartfelt kind of way, and not lose that as you go down these paths that present some obstacles. I think sometimes to staying open and clear.
Wow, that was I thought that was really interesting. Yeah, that's really, really deep, man. You're into...
I'm kind of like a really deep dude. I just want everyone to know how deep I am.
Yeah. Did you read philosophy and stuff?
Sure, yeah. I'm all about that Nietzsche.
That's cool. No, I like those goals. Those are very, very, thought out goals.
That and just like a shit ton of money.
Yeah, that and a shit ton of money.
Yeah, so like all that and just like bags of cash, man.
Yeah, like you want to be creatively fulfilled, but you also want the money so you can not live in a shoebox in New York.
There you go. So you get it.
Yeah, I get it. Well, thanks so much for doing the podcast.
So thanks for having me in your bed. I appreciate it.
This is technically Curtis's bed. Shout out to Curtis.
Thank you, Curtis,
from Laugh Factory for letting us use your bed. Awesome. Well, we always end the podcast by going to sleep. So good night, everybody.
Awesome. Good night.
Thanks for listening to Sleeping with Sarah, where I slept with Matt Ruby. You can check out Matt's upcoming album in March and follow him on Twitter and Instagram at Matt Ruby. And go to mattrubycomedy.com for upcoming dates. Sleeping with Sarah is part of the Laugh Factory Podcast Network. Please remember to subscribe and rate and review on iTunes, iHeartRadio, and SoundCloud. This podcast is brought to you by Audible.com. Please go to audibletrial.com/sleepingwithsarah. I'm releasing a new podcast each week. Be sure to tune in to find out who I have in bed with me next. Thanks to Josh Bryant for the music. Find out more on sleepingwithsarah.com, and please follow me on Twitter at Sarah Albritton. Until next time, good night.
Sleeping with Sarah.